All right, guys, we've got more updates on this Pac-4 situation, and this time it's Washington State. So I've talked about Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford all at length. Where does Washington State fit into this picture? Their president has come out and said that they have three options: join the Mountain West, join the American, or rebuild the Pac-12. Those currently are their three options. And then he says, I'll say the Pac-X right now. There's 4 members left, but that could change literally within hours. And so I think each of those we're pursuing in a parallel pathway, and we want to evaluate what's going on and what's best for Washington State. So it feels like Washington State is understanding the writing is on the wall. They are not in control of this situation. Them and Oregon State are in a very similar spot, and it depends on what Stanford and Cal want to do. That's what's going to, move this forward, and it will significantly affect what happens to both Washington State and Oregon State. The idea of joining the Mountain West would probably just include Washington State and Oregon State. It would involve Stanford and Cal going to the ACC. We're still trying to get word on what happened with the whole Stanford-Cal thing, the rumors that there was another meeting, there was going to be another vote. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But right now, Washington State, the idea of the third option, rebuilding the Pac-12, it just doesn't. Right now, I really don't know what's going to happen when it comes to Stanford, but would they really just try and rebuild that conference and keep keep Power 5 status somehow? It seems so unlikely considering all the teams that would be joining the Pac-4 in a quote-unquote rebuilt Pac-12 would be Group of 5 teams. So the majority of teams in that rebuilt Pac-12 conference would be Group of 5. The other thing that's interesting, he comes out and says they might join the American Conference. That seems rather unlikely based on where the American is right now in terms of, geography. But who knows at this point? We will see. This is a real interesting thing, guys. Apple wants to be a force in live sports. Could they potentially buy ESPN? And we know Apple, they made a pitch to the Pac-12. It was going to be them getting all of the top rights for the Pac-12 games. There's an alternate universe where all the big-time Oregon games, all the big-time Washington games are on Apple TV, and it's all streaming. This is so bleak, but honestly, how does this situation get worked out when it comes to live sports? You've got cable, you've got streaming. Both of them have significant problems. I mean, we've got DirecTV right now who's in some type of battle with Fox. People that have DirecTV can't even watch Fox, and the college football season and NFL season are coming up, and you're paying $130 a month for cable, and you can't even watch Fox, which has so many different games. And then you go to streaming and you've got the lagging, you've got the buffering, you can't change channels easily. Both of them are a complete mess. I guess if anyone can pull this off to where you can actually stream live sports and it's good and you can change channels quickly, Apple would be the ones to do it. Apple boss Tim Cook has decided on a slow and steady approach to live sports right now. Maybe Apple, we know how great their phones are. They might be the ones to save streaming live sports and really do it correctly. And is it something to where you might have to install some type of Apple thing in your home to get the correct connection? I don't know, but something has to be done about this because right now we're stuck in between where it seems like all the young people are going from cable to streaming, but the streaming is not caught up to cable for live sports. It's still crap. Now, some people say, no, it's good. You just have bad internet. Guys, trust me, I've got amazing internet. Streaming live sports, you're talking about a 5-minute delay. You're talking about buffering. You're talking about the quality of the picture going down from 1080 to 720 because of the lag. It auto goes down and it goes from Ultra HD to just HD and it gets really pixelated. All of this stuff happens. Something has to be done. Apple TV, could you imagine if they would have done that deal with the Pac-12? I wonder how many people would have actually bought their subscription. Imagine if they did it right, though. That would be crazy. 2 reasons Stanford joining the ACC at a discounted rate makes sense for both parties. So in my opinion, I think it makes sense for Stanford because you'd be getting in a Power 4 league that has good academics. Why it doesn't make sense is because of the travel, and would Stanford really want to sacrifice all of their other sports, their swimming, all the Olympic stuff, travel out all that way just for football when they could be independent and easily afford it? The other reason I'd say it makes sense for the ACC is just trying to survive. So the ACC as an entity and teams like FSU and Clemson, they've got different prerogatives. Clemson and FSU, their number one goal is to get more money ASAP. That's why they've been saying all this stuff, especially FSU, Clemson more so behind the scenes. But definitely just for the ACC as a whole, absolutely, it makes sense to add more teams. The question is, would Cal and Stanford, in terms of all of that travel, would they really want to do it for, let's be honest, not a good TV deal? I mean, if you're USC and UCLA, yes, I'll sign up for the Big Ten and the terrible travel. If we're talking about adding a West Wing, if you're going to give me $70 or $80 million a year, I'm going to be in a top 2 conference in college football. It's a lot different for Stanford and Cal. And right now, we're just in a waiting pattern. To me, it just makes so much sense for the Big Ten just to wait this entire situation out, add Stanford and Notre Dame together. Although I understand that people are going to say Notre Dame's never joining a conference. I think it's a matter of time. The money's going to be too good in the Big Ten in the future. And also the Big Ten can entice Notre Dame if they do add Stanford, and they already have USC as well. Maybe they also add Cal, but I don't even think you need to add Cal. I think the next 2 teams to join the Big Ten, and maybe I'm wrong on this, maybe Stanford ends up going to the ACC and it works out like that, but I think Notre Dame and Stanford will be the next 2 teams into the Big Ten. That will push them to 20 teams. It fits too well. You could also possibly look at the ACC, but I doubt that. Personally, this is just a little, paragraph from an article. FSU is not going to the Big Ten and may not move anywhere. So yes, ESPN has a lot of control over Florida State right now because ESPN has major rights to the ACC. They have major rights to the SEC. So ESPN can say, listen, we're not losing Florida State. If Florida State wants to do some type of buyout with the ACC, we might be able to help facilitate that, but Florida State, you're not going to the Big Ten. If you want to go to the Big Ten, you're going to have to fork over $300 million in a buyout, $30 million per year, because you signed the TV deal. The grant of rights is through 2036, but listen, we might be able to help you and facilitate you to the SEC and lower your buyout, but you have to guarantee you're going to go to the SEC because we still want your TV rights, and then that's going to help us go to a 9 or a 10 game conference schedule. I mean, all of this might not matter if Apple buys ESPN. Could you imagine that? But like the Apple buys Disney, they could easily do it with Apple's worth significantly more. But that would be the idea, to where ESPN is not going to lose the rights to FSU. If FSU somehow goes from the ACC to the Big Ten, ESPN does not have the TV rights to FSU. It goes mainly to Fox and then also NBC and CBS, but I don't see ESPN letting that happen. So everyone's saying FSU to the Big Ten, unless there's like a crazy out within the grant of rights to where all of those teams, and realistically, the idea that 8 teams could come together and get rid of the grant of rights based on how bad the ACC's TV deal is, let's be real, it makes complete sense. All of these teams just care about money, money, money. There are a lot of ACC teams that I would think would fit fine in the Big 12. And that might be one of the reasons why the Big 12 is having some trepidation in possibly adding San Diego State, Oregon State, Washington State. Maybe they're saying, we see the writing on the wall with the ACC. If 8 of these teams come together to dissolve the grant of rights, this is speculation. Maybe it won't happen. Maybe there's something to where you can't even do that. But the idea would be that the Big 12 would be able to snipe a solid 3 or 4 teams and expand their league, and you'd be talking about adding teams like Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, teams like that, and you would have the SEC make their jump probably from 16 teams to 20 teams. And then I do agree, this is what they were talking about here. Well, with Notre Dame seemingly in a limbo and unlikely to make a jump, the Big Ten might have to move on from the prettiest girl at the dance. Well, I mean, the Big Ten has already kind of moved on from Notre Dame. They wanted Notre Dame last year, and obviously they've added, Washington and Oregon since then. So the Big Ten is fine with or without Notre Dame, but because this is all based around money, the Big Ten is not going to get all angry that Notre Dame doesn't want to join right now. If Notre Dame says next year, hey, we want in, they will be in because Notre Dame will make the Big Ten more money, and that's all that matters. And you can see they say bold prediction, Miami gets the nod, and then North Carolina and Virginia battle it out for the other spot. I'm not sure North Carolina can join a conference without NC State attached to the hip unless they're somehow able to change a law to where they can go to a different conference. But yes, I do agree. I think Miami becomes a big-time fit for the Big Ten, and the reason is that the Big Ten wants a team in the state of Florida. That could be a way to get it. There would also probably be some travel concerns, you would think, based on how, Miami would be like the only team down south from the Big Ten, so there would probably be a few travel concerns. You might try and add another team from down there, although who would you even add if you're the Big Ten that would be worth it from the state of Florida, because you're very likely not getting FSU. Would you look, maybe a little bit more north to North Carolina? That's a team they could look at. Virginia, they're definitely a fit in the Big Ten with the academics, but they're not going to add value. Like Virginia will not. That's the other thing. If the Big Ten is telling Stanford no thanks, do we really think they're going to add Virginia, who has a really bad football program right now? Yes, they do have a very solid basketball program with Tony Bennett, but basketball is not where you really make all your money. Maybe they say, it just doesn't make sense. The Big Ten would tell Stanford no, but Virginia yes, based off of everything that's gone on. So I do see the Big Ten wanting to get into Florida, but it does create another travel issue if they go for Miami, and there's really no other teams down there in the conference. Miami would have a terrible travel schedule. You could maybe try and add a few other teams, but that does get pretty dicey. If you just add Stanford and Notre Dame, the travel is perfectly fine. There's no issues there, but this is all about money, so maybe they try and do something like that. But guys, that is just the current speculation, and then this was something that I talked about yesterday, ACC meeting takeaways from yesterday. Stanford and Cal to the ACC picked up momentum and was discussed. Also, the ACC taking all of the Pac-4 as a possibility now, which was kind of the interesting thing that I saw. And then it also says NC State or North Carolina are the swing votes, which should not surprise anyone. I'm guessing it's an automatic no from adding any teams when you're talking about Clemson and FSU. They're just going to vote no matter what, and it comes down to maybe NC State or North Carolina switching their vote. Although I really don't understand the motivation. If they already voted no, what's really going to change it unless they're like getting bribed or something, honestly? I mean, what really would change it, So either way, that is the current situation on the ACC. Imagine a West Wing 2.0 if they bring in Washington State and Oregon State along with Stanford and Cal to help facilitate the travel. That would probably keep their conference together. I just don't think the conference has enough money unless ESPN somehow helps this whole thing by giving like extra money to Oregon State and Washington State, because Oregon State and Washington State are not in a good position. If they have to join the Mountain West, you're looking at a TV deal, $7 million per year, $8 million per year. It's not good. It wouldn't take much from ESPN and the ACC in terms of, hey, in year one, we're going to pay you $12 or $13 million, and we're going to create a West Wing. Maybe they would consider doing that. I do think if this ended up happening to where they did create a West Wing 2.0 in the ACC. FSU and Clemson are gone, and they know that they're gone, so they're adding teams and being proactive instead of being reactive and scrambling. They're saying, we know we're going to lose some teams. That's fine. That's why we're adding teams early, so when we lose those teams, it's not as big of a deal. So, guys, that is the current situation in regards to the conference realignment. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.